All right, this is April 25th. I want to just talk briefly about a severe weather outbreak event that's expected this afternoon and how social media and the communication of this has been going. And this just came to mind as I was watching my feed on X, and I follow the Washington Post, and they noticed in one of their posts here this afternoon on April 25th, an outbreak of severe weather, including the potential for large damaging hail, destructive winds, and tornadoes, kicks off Thursday across the central states. And then some of the comments on this is an interesting comment. I just wanted to share this comment. This person wrote, one of the, under quotes, one of the most favorable setups for severe weather in years, unquote. That must have been in the article that the Post posted. But then this comment went on to say, nowhere does this story establish this statement as fact. Instead, it glosses over this failure by babbling on about risk zones. And he says, I have news for your reporter and editors. This is typical for this time of year. And yes, severe weather is typical for this time of year, but I think this is a really important issue now these days. When we talk about communication of weather information and particularly severe weather events and such, a lot of times our communication and the media in particular does tend to go a little bit overboard. And I'm just saying that in a broad brush general sense. Most of the time, I think it has a lot of value. Now, I'm not pointing my finger at the Washington Post in this case, but I'm just saying in general, in the communication business of meteorology, we do run the risk of kind of irritating people and just making them think that we're overhyping everything by the way we phrase things in our communications and all of that, and especially with social media, and you have X and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all of these different sources where people are just getting blasted with their information. So I think it's a valid criticism that this viewer wrote in a reply. Severe thunderstorms, tornadoes are typical for this time of year. I think as a lesson from this is in the communication of weather information, we need to avoid hyperbole when possible, just so we don't run the risk of being too much out there with the story where people actually ignore what we're saying. So it's a very fine line, which we'll discuss more on during this course. All right, now I want to follow up on the post I mentioned. This is the link to the actual story that some of the people reading the story thought it was a little bit hyperbole. But this is the Washington Post story. Again, this is April 25th, at around noontime. It was posted and updated. And it talks about the severe weather outbreak. Now, the story does say this is one of the more significant setups in many years, as one of the commenters noted in the replies to the story on social media, on X in particular. But then it goes on to really delineate some really useful, important information where the highest risks are for severe thunderstorms. Not only this day, which is this is a Thursday in late April, and it talks about the risk categories. You can see some of the pop-up ads showing up in the feed here. But then it tells where those risk categories are: level 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And it talks not only about Wednesday's severe thunderstorm risk, but also Thursday's risk. And then even into Friday and the weekend shows another large area with severe thunderstorm risk, and then more into the weekend and next week even. So this is a fairly thorough, actually very thorough weather post from the Washington Post that has great information, delineates where the severe weather risk is going to be, not only for this day, which is April 25th, but also through the next several days. And I think in this case, the communication is done really well. Now, the Capital Weather Gang, part of the Washington Post, they typically are very thorough, timely with their information. That said, as I mentioned in the prior post, talking about how a viewer reacted as thought it was a hyperbole, the way it was phrased, we need to still be conscious of the fact that how we word all of these weather communications, especially during times of severe weather, so people do pay attention to these. But again, very useful information here on the Washington Post, communicated nicely and gives people a nice heads up. So that's one source of the information for the upcoming severe weather outbreak that extends for the next several days. So I would use that. Again, if you're going to use this in your weather journal, as this is an example, it doesn't apply to your particular journal, but if you would use this story, then you would identify the risk, and then you'd use, for example, newspaper media, TV media sites, how they're talking about the risk, Storm Prediction Center, et cetera, how they're warning people, and how well has that been communicated.